It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at the Doombook of Chaos, number 2. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, we take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today, that's the Doombook of Chaos, number 2. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Welcome back, my friends. Today on Fanzine Friday, as I mentioned, we're taking a look at this fanzine called the Doombook of Chaos. Just love saying that one. This is the size we're used to. This is light blue paper. The cover is just paper. It's not heavy stock, and then white pages folded in half, a couple staples. The Doombook of Chaos is not numbered based on some of the contents, some of the third-party items that they talk about in the reviews, for etc. I think this is like 1980, 1981 era. This one's a lot of fun. I don't know, for whatever reason, I like the attitude of this one. It's just a couple of guys, as we mentioned before, Brad Bennett and Jonathan Irwin. And Brad Bennett does, I think, almost all of the artwork here. And certainly he is the one who's done this cover. This guy's awesome, right? A little wizard with a hunchback and like flames for a hand coming out over here. It's very Doom's Book of Chaos of them. I love the way they do the lettering at the top, where they've got the face and the D, and then the little snake at the end with the K, and all the little spikes at the end of everything. It's just a lot of fun. So here is the first page, and this has the letter from the editor and the contents. Normally, I know I type that myself, but I decided they do a pretty good job with their table of contents, and it has this little piece of artwork, so I wanted to share it. As they mentioned here, this is basically focused on D&D. They give some credits to Gary. This is a amateur fantasy magazine. They say it's going to come out every 2 to 4 months, and give you the names of their guys. Here, to blow this up so it's a little easier to see. So first off, the art, which is awesome. The Herald of Destruction here, this little demon creature, right? Let's talk about the table of contents. The cover, that's Brad's art. The letter, which you just mentioned. Things from the Crypt, new monsters. Captain Broadsword here is the comic strip. Tales from Morak is the narrative about from their own campaign. It's a little bit of the story in their home setting. We talked about that in the first issue. And within that, there was the city of Thun, you'll remember, which I thought was excellent. And I was mentioning in the last video that they only give you some of the numbers. So in this issue, they have more details about the city of Thun. That'll come later. They've got a review of the city-state of the World Emperor. If you remember, Judges Guild first had the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. That's one of the very first things they released. It was the first city campaign that most dungeon masters saw, if they were exposed to Judges Guild. But in terms of time period, it was very early. And they came out later with the city-state of the World Emperor. And so they've got a review of that. They gave it a 7 out of 10. They thought it was pretty decent. Then we've got Mordread, which is could be one-person adventure. We'll talk about that when we get there. D&D editions, which are the concept of plagues, and they've got some charts and tables we'll talk about. The new class, which is the Voodoo Mage. Details about the city of Thun. Special monster number 2. For whatever reason, they always have one monster off by itself. And more about the Voodoo Mage, and then the just rear cover art. They mentioned at the bottom, in terms of credits, Brandon and JP, or Des Irwin. And then Mordread, they mentioned, which is the adventure module in here, is credited to John Grandidge, who is not one of the 2 original guys. So here are our things from the Crypt, and as you know, these are new monsters, and I'm always a huge fan of new monsters. So the first one here is the Sandman. The Sandman is basically this sort of, you see the art there to the side of a ball of sand. He takes away your strength 1 point per round if he falls asleep, and basically if you breathe his dust, you make a save versus poison, you fall asleep, and then he begins to sap your strength. You get to 0, you're dead. If someone else can get you out of that Sandman cloud, you get your strength back 1 point back per day. Only magical weapons, and every other round that you're inside the cloud, you've got to make this save. pretty good monster, actually. The Doom Killer, the art is fantastic. 2 fists do 2d8 each. If they hit and the gaze causes you to rot, losing 1 hit point per round. No save, so that's pretty potent. He's the Doom Killer after all. You cast Cure Serious Wounds, the rot will stop. Cure Disease slows it, which is interesting. Cure Serious Wounds will stop it, but Cure Disease will not. I'd probably switch those, but anyway. In the gaze is 20, straight line 20 feet right in front of him. Only one sort of victim on the rot at a time in each round. And he looks like an oily black golem with smoldering red eyes. So, pretty good. Next we have, and you can see the art over here to the side, they look like fangs. They're called fang flies, number appearing 1 to 3 or 1 to 100 in their lair. They bite, doing 1 to 3 points of damage, but they have disease, save versus poison, or you become paralyzed. You actually will look dead, but you'll have a faint pulse detectable by maybe. I'd probably give you a chance to detect it, but basically you're still alive, but it don't act like it. And then a yellow film forms over your eyes, and that's the disease from the bite lasts 1 to 6 days. You use two points of constitution every day. That'll come back to you 1 point per week if you survive. So you normally find them on a dead body, and you can sort of try and swat them away if you sneak up on them. But if they come after you, attacking you, you're in trouble because they're little tiny things, right? And their armor class is -4. So that's a little tough. Next, unfortunately, no art for the Ormy. Carries a weapon. These are the offspring of female gnomes captured by orcs, and then they are condemned to insignificance because of permanent invisibility. It's not clear how they end up permanently invisible, but apparently they do. And then they sneak around in cities or dungeons, stealing things using their invisibility, but somehow, even though they're invisible, they can't escape from the orcs. So yeah, I don't know if it's the crossbreeding that causes them. Maybe that's what causes them to be permanently invisible. Don't love that one. Armor class -5 probably takes into account the invisibility, I guess, because if you added invisibility penalty on top of that, they're dang near impossible to hit. The Moon Moth, nice little drawing here. It bites you for 1 to 4 damage, has acidic saliva, has golden yellow. They're golden yellow or silvery in appearance with glowing green eyes. The best thing about them is they flit around and they sort of mesmerize you. And you make a save versus magic at +3, or you become dizzy for 1 to 3 rounds. If you hit them, this dust comes off that can cause a trance of sort of hallucinogenic, futurist. Maybe you can think you can see your future. The dust is highly valued, so something you can recover. I like that kind of concept in a monster. And then we have the Psychomorph, which causes a sonic blast 10 times per day, and it's just its mere gaze can cause damage. Some type of alien, polymorphs at will. The natural form is a bluish, 2-headed hobbit with kaleidoscope eyes. So that's an odd choice for an alien, but there it is nonetheless. Okay. Then we have our little comic strip, Captain Broadsword. This is funny. I think it's funny. Let me get myself out of the way for a second here. So it says, treasure, I wonder what's behind the portal. Take a peek. He looks in, he gets stabbed in the eye. He says, I don't know what it is. It's hostile. The guy heals him, and they kick in the door. And then you look at the last caption, which I think is what's funny, is you can see the 2 guys have their little heads at the bottom. And you can see it looks like an orc that's been ripped in half. One half has this shield, and the other half has the mace. And so the tagline is, oh no, half orcs. Half orcs. Haha. Anyway, that's funny. Here is the John Grandidge's Mordread, which is he calls a solo mini dungeon. I think these things, when they're well done, you could use them as a dungeon master. You just have to read them and piece it together ahead of time. This design I have seen and talked about some other videos, earlier fanzines, and they had 2 because that's where they said they got the idea. And so the 2 concepts here, right? One, they use random, totally weird numbers, so it's harder to sort of cheat or accidentally see when you're doing it yourself. where you'd go. But the essence is you start down here at the bottom. You can't see very well. It's 87A, which is just stairs going down to a door, right? And so that's the starting point of the adventure. You come into this room. You're going to see a pit, and you hear someone saying, "Help me!" And you see a little glowing skull off to the side, and then you see 3 doors ahead of you, right? And you're off to the races. And you decide what you do. You know, it's essentially like a pick a path, design your own adventure book, right? Choose your own adventure book from back in the day. And it just says, you know, if you go to B, turn to this one, C, turn to this one. This is also, you may know, Tunnels and Trolls did a lot of solo adventures that are designed the same way. So this is his adventure. It's not very big. I think it doesn't even have a dozen rooms in it. Maybe a little more than a dozen, counting hallways. He says this is just the beginning. I don't know if people like this. If they do, you know, here's where we'll end, and I'll give you what comes next in a future edition. I think, you know, it would be a good introductory adventure. It's low level. You could decide what happens next in terms of the passageways where there's nothing provided here, what happens next. You know, and all in all, I think in terms of the strength of the monsters, the use of traps, I think this is pretty well done. I read it through a couple of times, and you know, on the second time through, I kind of like it quite a lot. All right, so next we have their new chart, new rules. It's called Plagues. They said, hey, we don't have a chart for this. Again, the main criticism I have of this is that it is too likely that a plague exists, but set that aside. You decide on your own, right, how likely it is. Here's the consequence of the plague. You roll 4 choices: disease, rain, and you'll come back to why rain is a plague, creatures, or special. So the diseases are the typical diseases: cholera, smallpox, influenza. There's all kinds of brain blight. Lycanthropy, I'm not sure why that's a disease, but whatever. That would be the plague would be a disease. Rain, water causing flood. That makes sense, right? Or your other options: blood, acid, creatures, or other. And so the creature list, whether it's a plague of creatures that have moved in or it's raining, it's the same list: rats, cats, dogs, frogs, bats, mosquitoes, locusts, ants, spiders, worms, slugs, zombies, ghouls, sewer woglodons, rabbits, fangflies, which is a monster from earlier, sturges, invisible creatures, and roll again, but they're invisible. Some type of intelligent creature, so the same type of creature, but now they're just super smart, or other. So I don't know about raining cats and dogs, but I guess maybe that was supposed to be funny. Not sure. And then the special, which is, again, 25% chance this is the type of plague you have. All eldest sons die. Mass amnesia of 90% of the population. Mass blindness of 90% of the population. A dense fog that moves in and stays there for up to 6 months. Radiation, which probably kills everybody, but lasting 1 to 6 months, or other. And to be clear, that's it. That's the end of the chart. So other is not defined anywhere. That is just, I guess, DM makes it up. But okay, I thought the idea of saying, you know, disease was really common in the Middle Ages, and perhaps it's appropriate to think a little bit more about that in your world design. That every once in a while there should be a plague, and maybe it's just you got to stay away. Maybe there's something you really need, and you got to go in and risk it. Maybe you've got to help solve the plague. You know, those are all good ideas for plot hooks for something interesting in your campaign. I probably wouldn't do it very often, but I think it's an interesting idea. So the new character class is the Voodoo Mage. Definitely not my favorite of all the character classes in these fanzines I've seen. This is sort of the, you know, Caribbean voodoo theme. It's well done in the sense of it's well thought out, and it's very clear what you do. I don't, you know, maybe I'm just not a huge fan of voodoo to start with, so it was a good James Bond movie once with that in there, but I don't know that other than that I really need voodoo in my campaign. But, you know, I do think it could be an interesting one-time sort of setting NPC, right, where there's a voodoo mage. It probably is better for that setting than giving it to your characters, because one of the big things they can do is they make these dolls that they called hoodoos, right? And then they can damage somebody from a distance with it, and it's pretty powerful. And you certainly wouldn't want to let player characters be making all these dolls all the time and constantly causing mischief with people. I don't think it would work well in a campaign. But so starting at first level, cause wounds 3 times a day, affects your sensations, start learning mage spells, cause unconsciousness, cause muscle spasms, spell focusing through the hoodoo, hoodoo control, the black lotus dust, mind swapping, spirit binding, turn your hoodoo into a zombie, affect someone else's life increments, and something they call hellburst and imploding death. So again, this is the main gist of this character, is that it is very focused on sort of picking one person and causing mischief with that one person. So I don't think the greatest for a campaign, right? But in any event, now you probably wouldn't want someone to be high enough level to use this. So the hellburst will cause the person who he's got the hoodoo of to explode in a column of fire, killing that person. Does 10d10 damage to anybody who's, and then you subtract the further away, the less damage you take from the explosion. An imploding death is a death spell. Basically, the person collapses in on themselves and just out of existence. So again, those probably no player would appreciate getting hoodooed like that and having that happen to their character, so I probably wouldn't do that. But again, if you like the cultural feel of that, I think could be a good NPC, sort of one-time adventure for that. Could be really colorful and interesting. Okay. The city of Thun, right? You remember this? And now, basically, what he does here, he just has, remember, it was all numbered in the map. He doesn't give you the map again, so that's a minor critique. But I guess you should own all the Doom books, right? He gives you some very specifics of the numbered buildings that weren't in the last episode or issue, right? So 31, 2, 3, 4, and he goes down through merchants and different types of people, thieves area, various other little shops and things. It's the city is just A+, and it's even more so now that I see that he actually has the detail. He just didn't give it to me all in the first issue of the magazine or the fanzine. I like it quite a lot. This monster, not so much. This is a special monster. It's called the Malignant Door. I think you need it in. I think it it's in the campaign Mordread that John Grandidge did, and he gets some credit for this. Essentially, it's an enchanted door. You enchant the wood, and the door basically will either, there's a particular type of creature it won't let through, or it will only let a particular type of creature through, and you enchant it to that effect when you create it. So, maybe it only lets in orcs, or it only lets in elves, or whatever. Now, I'm not sure, like, if the elf opens the door and the dwarf runs through, it slams shut, or exactly how that's supposed to work. But anyway, that's the gist of it. The dwarf walks up to the door. She's not going to be able to get that open, right? Not until the elf tries it. So, in any event, that's basically it. It's not like it can be attacked. And he says it's armor class 6. I don't know why, because it's just sitting there in 5 hit dice. I guess you could hack it to death, to pieces, and maybe that's what you would do if you got frustrated. My party would, if you get frustrated, probably just start chopping the door after about 2 minutes. And here's the back page, and I only gave you the back page to show you the artwork. They do mention some very colorful explanations about what's coming up next, but it's nothing in particular. I mean, more monsters, more dungeons, more about the city of Thun, etc. So that's it for the Doombook of Chaos #2. I'm liking these quite a lot. If you can't tell, I just think there's something really fun about the vibe I get from these guys. Their stuff's good, their stuff's thoughtful, but it's not all that serious at the same time. Hope you guys are enjoying the Fanzine Friday series. Try to put that out about once a week, and I'm trying to get some other content out during the week. If you're liking the channel, I hope you'll subscribe and ask your friends who might like this kind of stuff to give us a look, and maybe they'll subscribe as well. That's all I've got today. Everybody have a great weekend, and until next time, keep rolling 20s.